One of the main recommendations in the Iraq Study Group's report was for the U.S. to begin talks with both Iran and Syria. Why has the Bush administration refused bilateral talks with both of these countries?
That's a very good question, and really it's difficult for me to fathom the answer. I saw Mr. James Baker and former Congressman Lee Hamilton handing over the report to President Bush that was televised, and I could see that President Bush was not very happy because already parts of the report had come out in the press, and the whole neocon philosophy was premised on not having any contacts with countries which were considered on the axis of evil or were very close to the axis of evil, and that included Iran and Syria. Syria, of course, was not officially on the axis of evil, but it was almost there. So this was a recommendation which went against a major ideological precept of the neoconservative philosophy, and that was why President Bush found it very difficult to accept this particular recommendation. But I have to say that as the events in Iraq are going from bad to worse, and I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel, the United States has been forced to change this particular stance. And there was a meeting 2 weeks ago in Baghdad attended by representatives of Iran, Syria, Iraq, and the United States. They were all together in the same room, something that was unthinkable a few weeks ago.
The 15-member Security Council unanimously passed a resolution last Saturday imposing new sanctions on Iran due to its refusal to halt uranium enrichment. What is the significance of these sanctions, and where are they likely to lead if Iran continues to refuse stopping uranium enrichment?
I don't think Iran would be very much affected by these sanctions, because the sanctions are weak and they would have a minimal effect. They are not sanctions which have been imposed under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter, which calls for military action. But they do represent an escalation. I think the message going out to Iran is that they have to stop uranium enrichment because they have not come clean with their nuclear program. And if you keep enriching uranium by introducing more and more centrifuges, which they are doing at their plant, then a country which is enriching uranium at 10% or 8% can go up easily to 90%. The Iranians are relying on international law. They are saying that they are allowed to enrich uranium, that other countries are enriching uranium too. So why have they been singled out, especially in a region where the only nuclear weapons power is Israel, of course, a non-declared nuclear weapons power. So to that, the answer is that the Security Council is not certain that the uranium enrichment is only for peaceful purposes, for electricity generation. So here you have a gulf of mistrust, and it is the Security Council resolutions are based on this mistrust of Iranian intentions.
The Bush administration has been accused of taking hostile actions against Iran in order to provoke a war. Is the Bush administration trying to provoke a war with Iran, Ambassador Hassan?
The Bush administration is putting the option of an aerial attack on Iran on the table. They are sending a clear message to Iran that if Iranian actions within Iraq hurt the American troops, then they could expect an attack from the United States. They want to keep the Iranians guessing. But in theory, it would be very difficult for the United States to engage in this type of attack because the Iranians have countervailing options of retaliation. They could inflict considerable damage in that region by attacking American and other vessels in the Straits of Hormuz, by trying to shut down oil facilities and thereby endangering world oil production. by putting pressure on Israel, even attacking Israel. So yes, these series of events the Iranians are able to unleash, because the United States is not in a position, with its commitment of troops, which are getting exhausted and their rotations are increasing in Iraq, to launch a land invasion of Iran. That most observers feel is outside the realm of possibility. So I think this is more of a threat, that we retain this capability of hitting your nuclear installations from the air.
Ambassador Hassan, the last question I'd like to ask you is, how important is solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and bringing greater peace to the Middle East?
I think it is central to bringing peace and stability in the Middle East. Actually, the road to Baghdad lies through Jerusalem. And I think this has been a huge shortcoming of the Bush administration, that it has kept the Palestine-Israeli issue on the back burner for 6 years. And now we see heightened diplomacy. They are trying to make up for lost time. The visits by Secretary Rice, her second shuttle diplomacy, which is currently undergoing, is an attempt to make up for the inertia which the United States displayed in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for 6 years. After what President Clinton had engineered, when the Israelis and the Palestinians came so close to an overall agreement at the Tabah talks in December 2000, the United States took its eyes off the ball and completely put the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is the central conflict, on the back burner. We should remember that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not a localized conflict. It is not an Arab-Israeli conflict. It has become an Islamic-Israeli conflict. And I think any country which wants peace in the Middle East has to take in view the feelings of the Islamic world, where they feel that the Palestinians have been very badly treated and oppressed and marginalized. So I think the United States finally has realized this, and it has now accelerated its diplomacy, and the diplomacy of Secretary Rice points to a new attempt to solve this long-standing and long-festering dispute, the Israeli-Palestinian dispute.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much, Ambassador Hassan, for coming into the Global Current today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we look forward to having you on the show again sometime in the future.
Well, with pleasure. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Minority Report on the Global Current.
مين إرهابي؟ أنا إرهابي؟ كيف إرهابي وأنا عايش ببلادي؟ مين إرهابي؟ أنت إرهابي، ماكلني وأنا عايش ببلادي، قتلني زي ما قتلت أجدادي، أجل القانون على الفاضي، ما أنت يا عدو بتلعب دور الشاهد، المحامي والقاضي، علي قاضي، نهايتي بادي، حلمك انقل فوق معنى آلية، حلمك لآلية تصير بالمقابر الطرية، ديمقراطية والله انكم نسية، كتر ما اغتصبتوا النفس العربية.